Hello and welcome to today's topic, and the topic of today is management and innovation, the key competencies that every manager must have. My name is Greg Kinnaird and I'm the Managing Director of the Australasian Management Centre. The Australasian Management Centre focuses on developing your leaders and teams to champion innovation. With that, we were involved with training programs, organisational development initiatives, we're involved with executive coaching and mentoring, and also we're heavily involved with workplace assessments. In today's session, over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be looking at a number of aspects to do with management and innovation. Specifically, we'll be looking at the characteristics and attributes of the best and worst boss. We'll also be looking at the 15 critical factors to stay one step ahead of the pack. And also we'll be looking at the skills, the knowledge and the attributes when recruiting managers within the workplace. I'd also like to extend the invitation at the moment for you to then join us online for any online forums and discussions. You'll notice that today we're using PowerPoint, and as a result of that, we can make available these PowerPoint presentations to you if they're requested. So let's have a look at management and innovation. As a focus statement, it's been said that creativity is the idea and innovation is the action to that idea. And here at the Australasian Management Centre, we heavily present the fact that there is a conceptual difference between creativity and innovation. So where many organisations are creative, the key aspect that we're looking at are what are the fundamental skills, knowledge and attributes to take that creative organisation to being one of innovation. I know that within Singapore, a definition of innovation can be defined as this. An innovative organisation is a workplace that can implement an initiative that will either improve effectiveness or efficiencies by 25%, which is sustainable over a 3-year time frame. Other definitions of innovation can be defined as adding value to things that are new or things that currently exist within the workplace. So let's have a look at our first main topic that's based on management innovation, and that's looking at the best and the worst characteristics of a boss. Many of us through our working career have had leaders that we've reported to. Now reflect back on those leaders that you've had involvement with over the last maybe 3 months, 3 years, or maybe 30 years. And think back to what is it that made those leaders either the best boss or the worst boss. Feedback from our clients indicate that the best boss is a person who is firm but fair and consistent. And if you think about those terms of firm, fair and consistent, that's to do with decision making, consistency of dealing with issues such as conflict, but also too, if we're looking at firm, fair and consistency, we're looking at consistency of approach when dealing with different types of people within the workplace. If we have a look at the characteristics of a worst boss, feedback from our clients tell us this, that a worst boss is a person who is soft, indecisive, but is also somebody who is inequitable with their dealings. Now, when we ask our clients, if you had the choice of reporting to a worst boss who is somebody who is a dictatorial boss, and a worst boss who is somebody who is soft, then who would they prefer to report to? And again, feedback from our clients suggests that if they had the choice, they'd actually prefer to report back to a dictatorial, autocratic boss any day over a boss who is soft and indecisive. The reasons why is that a person likes to know where they stand, and at least with a dictatorial, autocratic boss, at least you know clearly where the parameters of operations are. So, if you're looking at being the best boss, always strive to be firm but fair and consistent, and that is to do with decision making, to do with conflict resolutions, and actually to do with dealing with different people within the workplace. So let's actually build upon this concept of management in innovation, because what we are trying to do is to take that creative concept into a reality within the workplace. So I'd now like to look at the next topic of today's focus, and that is 15 critical factors for staying ahead of the pack. Critical factor number 1, and we're looking at the skills here, effective communications. Now again, think back to your best boss that you've actually reported to over your working career. And there's a high chance that that best boss would be a person who is highly effective in regards to communications. And the forms of communications will either be in the written format, for example, via email, or it could be verbally, just dealing with you either formally or informally on a day-to-day basis within the workplace. Our clients have actually told us that clearly an effective boss with good, clear communications is a person who takes the time out to not only consider the tasks that need to be achieved, but also to the people who are involved in that task. So that's critical factor number 1, effective communication skills. Let's have a look at critical factor number 2. Feedback from over 2,000 clients indicate that effective leadership skills is another driving factor for establishing a person as a best boss. If you think about leadership skills and the definition of leadership skills, it is the ability to be able to influence others positively. So we're not talking about manipulation in the negative sense. We're actually talking about the ability to influence others positively so that you can get results with and through people. So if you're looking at the whole aspect of effective leadership skills, we're talking about providing clear direction, we're talking about providing the support that people need, and then satisfying the needs of the followers. The interesting thing is that according to Ken Blanchard and Paul Hershey, who are the creators of situational leadership, they say that leadership is a perception, and it's the perception of followers that will actually identify a leader who is effective or not. So let's now look at critical factor number 3, the ability to solve problems fast. As we've identified earlier, a person who is a worst boss is somebody who is soft, indecisive, and acts with inequity. So if you think about this, a critical factor for a highly effective manager, which is the ability to solve problems fast, we're actually looking at a person who has a good process. We're looking at a person who is able to make decisions quickly, but also to a person who can actually get the buy-in and commitment from the people within the workplace. So this is particularly important if you're looking at getting support for those creative ideas that need to be implemented within the workplace. Critical factor number 4 is the ability to coach and mentor people so as to develop new skills. Think about the function of delegating. You might like to see delegation as the structured process to skills development. I know that there's many people out there that see the use of delegation as a process of pushing, tai chi, handballing, dumping a task. But in the true essence of delegation, it's actually a structured process of skills development, and this can be used effectively to coach or mentor people within the workplace. A current issue that we're seeing in the workplace is the ageing population of a workplace. And consider the next 10 or 15 years or so, that if we have an ageing population with people starting to retire from the working environment, what we need to do is to put in place solutions in order to start to, so that we can start to share our knowledge before we actually depart. So that's where you find an increase in systems such as knowledge-based management systems and customer relationship management. So let's further look at some of the critical factors. Critical factor number 5, the ability to be able to effectively delegate. Now, we've spoken earlier about delegation, but there's actually 8 main steps to delegating effectively. The first of those is the task. If you're going to delegate a task out, you need to first of all identify what that task is, and you need to inform others to where does that task fit into the bigger picture. The second step by delegation is objective. What you need to do is, as a leader, is to clearly explain what the objective is of the task that you're delegating out. The third step of delegation is the person. When you're delegating a task out to a person, clearly communicate to that person why they've been chosen for the task, but also too, you need to let them know how this task that's been delegated will actually help them out in their career. The fourth step for delegation is support and training. I know there's some old managers out there who believe that the best way to learn is to throw people in the deep end and it's either sink or swim. But with this fourth step of delegation, which is support and training, it means that you need to be there to effectively coach and mentor that person and to provide guidance with that person. The fifth stage to what we're looking at, or the fifth step to what we're looking at with the delegation, is to do with feedback. Now think about the person that you're providing the delegation task out to and consider how frequent do you need to provide feedback to that person. If you have a person that is highly competent and highly committed, you can imagine that you need to see them less frequently. But if you have somebody who is doing the task for the first time, and maybe that person is a perfectionist, you can imagine that you would need to spend more time with that person in order to give the guidance and direction, plus also more specific detail. The sixth step in regards to delegation is authority. If you're going to delegate a task out to somebody, you actually need to let them know how far they can go. So for example, a person who is highly competent and highly committed, you could actually give them a wider range of authority. And so for example, that could mean take on this task, complete this task, but only report to me at the end of that task. But if you have somebody who is new to the task, but is also committed, you can imagine that the authority would be a less range of authority, and your request to that person is undertake this task, but report back to me within 2 days so that we can keep progress of the particular task. So step number 7 for delegation is that of advising others. So as part of advising others, it's important to let the person know the task that is being undertaken, but also too, it's important to let other people know within the workplace why that person was chosen, what levels of authority they have, so this way you can reduce any barriers that you have in the workplace. The final step for delegation is that of evaluation. So once you've delegated the task out, then what you can do is you can actually then sit down with that person and from a continuous improvement viewpoint is ask that person what worked, what didn't work, and what can we do differently the next time in order to improve this entire process of delegation. Now keep in mind that delegation is the structured process for skills development. So the key factors here is process. There's 8 steps, and in summary those 8 steps are focus on the task, the objectives, the person, the support, the feedback, the authority to how far that person can go, advising other people, but also to evaluation. So with that, you can follow that process in order to develop the skills of your people within the workplace. The end result of this is you'll be seen as a highly effective manager and one who is firm but fair and consistent for when it comes to giving out work instructions. Now let's have a look at critical factor number 6. So this is critical factor number 6 of 15 critical factors, and that is market awareness and the knowledge of the organisation's products and services. So as a highly effective leader, it's important for you to keep pace with market awareness and the knowledge of the organisation's products and services. I'll just share with you a story that I experienced only recently. I'm just about ready to have a book published, and as part of my research, I investigated a number of publishers. One of the publishers I actually contacted by telephone and asked them, can you tell me how to use the internet in order to find a specific product I was looking for? The response by that particular person from that company responded, I don't know how to use our internet, and the reason for that is we only use the intranet. And I thought that's a classic example of where a leader in the workplace should be aware of products that's not only used internally, but also a product that's actually used externally. 18 months ago, we conducted a survey on over 200 business leaders within the workplace, and of those 200 business leaders, only 55 of those business leaders could clearly recite what their company website address was. So that's a clear indication that an organisation could actually have innovative initiatives in the workplace, but if people aren't actually informed or kept up to date to what products and services are, then they could actually be doing a disservice to their internal and external customers. So let's look at critical factor number 7, and that is knowledge of the organisational structure and an appreciation of cultural diversity. So let's look at the first part about knowledge of the organisational structure. And let's take something that's very simple. Reflect on your workplace and think about your workplace over the last 3 months or the last 3 years. And there's a high chance that your organisation has actually changed 4 ways. And here's 4 ways that organisations can change. It's either change by way of structure. Has your company restructured in the last 12 to 18 months? There's a high chance that you're saying yes. Think about technology, another change factor. Has your organisation implemented or changed any technology within the workplace? And we're not just talking computers here, but we're talking tools of the trade. The third method of change is actually that of process. So think about your workplace and consider, has your workplace introduced any new processes in the workplace? And that could be reporting processes, it could be quality processes, it could even be customer service type processes. And the fourth way an organisation can change can be that of people. There's a potential that through restructure, your organisation has actually flattened out. With that, that means that people have actually gone, or maybe because of the restructure, you've actually formed new team members. So again, if you think about the way organisations change, structure, technology, process or people, there's a high chance that working mechanisms within the workplace have actually changed, and as a highly effective leader, somebody who is firm but fair and consistent, it's important for you to keep pace with all of those changes. A very simple test for you could be something as simple as check to see whether the distribution lists within your workplace email systems are current and up to date. Another test could be check to see whether the telephone extension list within your organisation is current and up to date. These are ways that you can, just as a benchmark, you can consider the knowledge of the organisational structure. The second part to factor number 7 is an appreciation of cultural diversity. More and more we're becoming a global organisation, more and more we're becoming a global environment. So what this actually means is we need to be aware of cultural variations, not only from a social science perspective, but also too, we need to consider the different cultures within different workplaces. So if you think about cultures within workplaces, have you ever noticed that when you walk from the sales environment into the environment of accounts department, that it actually looks and feels different? So it's not the tables and the chairs that are making it feel different, it's actually the people within that particular working environment. So what that means is because of the makeup and the dynamic of different types of people in the workplace, we need to be sensitive and aware to the differences of values, opinions and beliefs of those people that represent the different work areas within the workplace. I'll give you one simple example. Imagine that you report to a boss, and that boss is a person who's fast-paced, task-orientated, high achiever, and everything they want yesterday. Now, you can imagine that particular boss would not really have the patience and the tolerance to sit down, put things in writing, discuss things, create environments where people can actively participate. Now, you can imagine that if I was a leader who was a person who wanted everything yesterday, that could actually create some conflicts for if I'm leading a workplace that is a slow-paced, procedural type department. And this is where we often see conflicts between fast-paced leaders for when they're communicating with technical type departments, such as accounts, such as information technology, such as research departments, such as laboratories. So what we need to do is to be sensitive of cultural diversity, not only socially, but also to dealing with different types of people in the workplace. And this is what makes a best boss. So let's now have a look at critical factor number 8. Critical factor number 8 is that of understanding of knowledge-based management systems and customer relationship management systems. So first of all, let's talk about knowledge-based management systems. I've mentioned earlier that with the ageing population, over the next 10 years or so, there'll be many managers exiting the workplace and heading towards retirement. The issue with that is we may have our job safety analysis put in place, we may have our continuous improvement processes put in place, but how do we extract out the information of intuition and experience from those people within the workplace? You could also imagine that a person who is going to exit out of the workplace may be reluctant to let go of information because that could actually create job insecurity, so they may withhold the power of that particular information. So a person who is a highly effective leader will not only have in place good systems and processes to deal with knowledge-based management systems, but they'll also create the environment of trust within a workplace so that people will confidently impart information for the good of the organisation. We can also consider it's important to know about customer relationship management systems, because if you have clients where their ageing population is also exiting out of the workplace, we also need to keep record and maintain a level of service to our existing client base. So with that maintains loyalty programs, but also to prioritisation programs. Critical factor number 9 looks at maintaining your knowledge of workplace systems, processes, and also protocols. So we can look at this in very many simple ways. So let's just take one simple way, or one simple example. Let's imagine that your workplace has restructured over the last 12 months or 2 years. As part of that restructure, there's a high chance that people have had to either apply for new positions, or there's a high chance that the positions that they're currently involved in has been a merger of 1 or 2 jobs. Now, if you take the function of that, every person has a job description. The interesting thing is within most organisations, most job descriptions are actually out of date and the last thing to be updated. So if we look at this critical factor of the knowledge of workplace systems, processes and protocols, then what's important is for us to sit down with our people, sit down with the Human Resources Department, and actually get an understanding to what the new role or the new process of what that job function is. And there's a fundamental reason for this, and it's to do with motivation. Because motivation is based on 2 primary things. One is goal expectation theory. People will head towards those goals that's expected of them. And the second thing is the theory of role expectation theory, that people will behave in the roles that they're actually given. So if people are currently behaving to out-of-date job roles, then that could actually make it quite difficult for those people to assist the organisation through change. So let's now have a look at critical factor number 10, and that is understanding of predictable human behaviour. Now, all of us deal with different types of people in the workplace, and research has actually shown that as soon as you go from managing a task, for example, an accountant who deals with a computer, or maybe an IT person that deals with computer programs, as soon as they move from managing a task to managing people, then what actually happens is that stress levels in that manager actually increase. And the reason for that is that stress is brought about by things outside of your control, and it's much easier to control a task or a system than what it is to controlling people. So what this means is, as a leader, one of the most important things that you can do is to try and understand the predictable behaviours of people within the workplace. So very quickly, I'll just demonstrate this. So imagine if you have a person in your workplace that behaves active and direct. Now, if you can, just think of a person in your workplace that does behave active and direct. There's a high chance that with that person, they're either more interested in directing others or they're more interested in impressing others. If the person you're thinking about is more interested in directing others, there's a high chance that they're motivated by power, control, status and ego, and the fear factor is failure and loss of control. Now, if it turns out that the person you're thinking of behaves active and direct, but they're more interested in impressing others, there's a high chance that their motivators will be that of recognition, being liked, prestige, and being part of the team. And the fear factor would be rejection and also isolation. Now, you're most probably thinking, but I'm considering a person that is a combination of both. Well, that is correct. Well, you can have people who are a combination of both, and with that, it will be a combination of wanting quick results, but also possibly in a team environment. So with that, let's think about another type of person. Think about a person who is reserved and indirect in their behaviours. If they're reserved and indirect in their behaviours, would you say that the person that you're thinking of is more interested in how to do the task, or would you say that that person is more interested in the quality of the task. Now, if the person you are thinking of is more interested in how to do the task, there's a high chance that they're motivated by security, routine, logical processes, and also appreciation. But the fear factor is that of insecurity and change. Now, if we go back to that person who is reserved and indirect, there is a possibility that you're thinking of a person who is more interested in the quality of the task, or if you like, a person who is a perfectionist. That type of person is actually motivated by accuracy and correctness. They're also motivated by standards, usually in a written format. And if you think about risk-taking, they tend to prefer lower levels of risk. And their fear factor would be that of criticism, but also that of chaos. And again, you might be thinking, well, the person that I'm considering could be a combination of both, focusing on how to do the task, but also quality of the task, and you would be correct. So with that, you'd have a person that is systems orientated, but a person who is actually motivated by quality detail. So with the critical factor number 10, understanding and predicting human behaviour, you can actually use specific models similar to what I've just spoken about to actually understand why people behave a certain way. And interestingly, the information I just shared with you is the basis of my up-and-coming book that will be released very shortly. Critical factor number 11. And feedback from our clients identify a hands-on person who is accountable and responsible for outcomes. So again, if you think about a highly effective leader, this is a person who will attend a meeting and will say at that meeting, as a result of our meeting, this is what I'm going to do. And as a result of saying this is what I'm going to do, when they go back out into the workplace, they actually follow through with the behaviours in order to back up the words that they're supported. In short, some people call this walking the talk or leading by example. So that's a critical factor. Critical factor number 12 is a person who is open and flexible to change. So if I think about the negative of this, you can often tell a person who is not open and not flexible to change. And you can often tell this type of person by their sentence structures. And you know the type, you've heard them at meetings before. We've done this before. I remember doing this 10 years ago. It's not possible. What's the point? It's going to change in 3 years' time. So if you're a person who wants to be seen as a highly effective leader, that is the person who is open-minded. And it reminds me of the statement or the quotation that was once said, your mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open. Critical factor number 13 is a person who is self-motivated and committed to achieve team results. I'll just say that again. A person who is self-motivated and committed to achieving team results. Over the last few years, we've been undertaking a survey on what motivates people in the workplace. Feedback from over 2,500 people have told us that these are the top 5 motivators. Development of self, recognition, being kept informed, job variety, and money. Interestingly, that with those top 5 motivators, money as a motivator comes in at number 5. What's even more important is the number 1 motivator is recognition. Now, many of us as managers do not have the authority to be able to issue pay rises to people in the workplace. Now, if this is you, what this means is that you can use delegation as a highly effective tool for delegation. Because through delegation, the structured process of skills development, you're able to develop that person, you can recognise the talents, you can keep them informed of projects, but also too, you're making the workday very interesting with a lot of variety. So if we're looking at a leader that is a highly effective leader, it's actually a person who can maintain those levels within themselves through self-motivation and commitment in order to achieve the team results. Critical factor number 14 is a person who is an innovator and a visionary. Again, if we think about the definition of innovation, it's about adding value to something that is new or existing. Within the workplace, there are many things that you can focus on in order to continuously improve those aspects within the workplace. I'd recently been working with one organisation that was looking at developing an innovative environment, And it found that these were the following 3 inhibitors that were actually driving innovation in the workplace. Number 1, the leaders didn't walk the talk when it came to innovation. Inhibitor number 2 was that they didn't have a clear, specific focus on what to be innovative on. And inhibitor number 3 was that management practices and reward mechanisms didn't actually create an environment for people to actively get involved. So a person who is an innovator and a visionary will actually not only create the time and space to be innovative, but also too they'll create the environment for people wanting to succeed. And the last critical factor number 15, is the ability to develop and maintain trust at all levels. So I'll say that again, the ability to develop and maintain trust at all levels. This is quite important because if you're a highly effective leader who is firm but fair and consistent, you're automatically going to be creating environments of trust and rapport so that when it's times of change, people will actually follow the leader. Remember I said at the beginning that leadership is a perception and it's the perception of followers. If the followers perceive that you're a trustworthy leader, then they will actually follow you. If your followers perceive that you're not a trusting person, then there's a high chance that they will not support your initiatives within the workplace. As a result of these 15 critical factors and feedback from over 2,500 people within industry, the Australasian Management Centre has been able to develop what's known as the Innovation by Management Framework. The Innovation by Management Framework assumes a number of things. One of the things that actually assumes is that within the workplace, as a leader, there is going to be a time and a place where you do need to be directive with your behaviour. But also too, as a leader, there's going to be a time and a place where you do need to be adaptable within the workplace. Also too, the Innovation by Management Framework assumes that there's going to be situations within the workplace where you do need to be internally focused, but also too, there's going to be situations where you do need to be externally focused. Because of our personality, we will tend to have a bias towards one or a number of these key aspects. Within this framework, the Australasian Management Centre has actually identified that there's 8 specific roles that a leader needs to take on within the workplace in order to be seen as highly effective. One of these roles is the role of being a strategist. And the fundamental skill or competency the person needs to develop in to be effective at strategy is that of being taking initiatives and risk-taking, establishing goals, but also to delegating effectively to people in the workplace. So that's the first role, being a strategist. The second role is being a person who is a motivator. And as a motivator, the key skill sets that need to be developed by a highly effective leader is a person who can set effective time management, effective stress management, but also too has the ability to motivate other people in the workplace. A third role that a highly effective manager needs to take on within the workplace is that role of being a team leader. Now, the skill that is developed or necessary to be developed for being a good team leader is that of developing teams, problem solving, but also to resolving conflict. A fourth role that a highly effective manager and leader needs to take on board is that of being the role of dealing with individuals. And the skills that need to be developed when dealing with individuals relates to highly effective workplace leadership, highly effective communications, but also to developing your staff. And now if we look at a fifth role, the fifth role is the role of dealing with performance. And the skill sets and the competencies that's required to deal with performance effectively is that of performance management, benchmarking, and balanced scorecard. A sixth role is the role of dealing with projects as a project manager. And the specific skill sets that's required to be highly effective in the role of dealing with projects is that of being a project manager, being able to plan and organise, but also control any project or task that's given to you. The seventh role is being that of an innovator. As an innovator, it's highly important that you develop these 3 skill sets. And that is the identification of trends. The second is looking at creative and lateral thinking techniques. And the third skill set is developing techniques in order to manage change. And the final specific role that you need to take on within the workplace, and this is the 8th role, is the role of being a good networker. You may have heard the term, it's not only what you know, but who you know. What we're looking here as the networker is developing skills to be able to deal with power, politics, negotiation and selling, but also too, being effective at public speaking and presenting. So what we've described here very quickly is the concept behind our industry research and putting that in a model that's known as Innovation by Management Framework. For further details on that model, you can actually visit our website at www.aamc.com.au, or you can send an email to the Australasian Management Centre for further details. So, what else did this research show? We've been undertaking a number of research studies here in Asia, Australia, but also Africa. But if you have a look at what a manager does in Australia, feedback from over 1,200 people in Australia has actually identified that the key skills for a highly effective manager and leader in the workplace are these. And I'll just read out 3 from the list. Effective communications, effective people skills, and effective planning skills. In regards to knowledge, 1,200 people in Australia have actually identified that it's important to have an understanding of performance management systems. It's important to have a knowledge of the industry, plus also too, knowledge of the company structure. If we're looking at attributes, feedback from those same people identified that the attributes of a highly effective leader is a person that's somebody who is results orientated, somebody who is accountable and responsible, and somebody who can actually develop and maintain trust. Now, this information is actually very similar to feedback from over 800 people within the Asia Pacific area. You might be interested to know that recently we've been undertaking some field studies in South Africa. It's only been a small sample group at this point of just under 100 people. And what these 100 people are clearly identifying is that a highly effective manager in South Africa is a person who has good computer skills, good communication skills, but also too, effective problem solving and decision making skills. By way of knowledge, they're looking at product knowledge, market knowledge, but also too, client-based knowledge. And the attributes that people in South Africa are looking for from highly effective leaders are those people who are confident, committed, flexible, they're innovators, and also too, people that have strong and high work ethics. So it's interesting to consider this information has come from over 2,000 people just over the past few years as part of our research. So, so with that, I'd just like to start to summarise this particular topic that we've been looking at, which is management and innovation, the key competencies that every innovative manager must have. For further support on this particular program, you can actually access reports that has actually come from industry leaders. With the Australasian Management Centre, we regularly conduct leadership and innovation forums. At these forums, we have 3 industry people who are captains of the industry talking about specific topics. So if you wish to receive a report on managing cultural change, feel free to contact us and we'll arrange to have that sent out to you. Another topic that we looked at with our industry leaders was building an innovative culture. And the insights into that, in essence, the insights that came out of building an innovative culture essentially came down to 4 main things. One is a leader needs to have a clarity of goal in the workplace. A leader needs to have clarity of roles of people in the workplace. Also, 2, people need to have clarity to what the process is so that they can support that as individuals. So the 4 key aspects of building an innovative culture is clarity of goal, clarity of role, clarity of process, but also too, individuals within the workplace need to know where they fit within that entire structure. Another leadership and innovation forum that we conducted was looking at optimising human resources. And this specific forum focused on how do we deal with the ageing workplace and what are some strategies that can be utilised within the workplace. So with that, we had feedback from industry leaders who looked at issues within the region. One of the speakers also looked at issues within a specific workplace, but also too, we looked at the importance of dealing with building strategic alliances within that workplace. So what I'd like to do is just to summarise what we have been looking at. In this topic of management and innovation, the key competencies that every innovative manager must have, we've been looking at the characteristics and the attributes of the best boss and worst boss. Again, I'll just summarise by saying somebody who is firm but fair and consistent. We've been looking at the 15 critical factors to stay one step ahead of the pack. And also too, we've identified the skills, knowledge and the attributes of when to recruit managers. And this is feedback from people within the Asia Pacific region, Australia, but also South Africa, to what they've identified as the critical elements for highly effective managers in the workplace. Now again, my name is Greg Kinnaird from the Australasian Management Centre, and what I'd like to do is to extend this invitation to you, that if you do wish to ask any questions or any queries, all you need to do is to email us at service@aamc.com.au, or what you can do is you can access our website at aamc.com.au. We're more than happy to work with you within your workplace. So if you feel that you have a specific requirement to develop leaders and teams to champion innovation, feel free to contact us. From there, I'd just like to say thanks very much, and hopefully I'll get to meet with you face to face over the next few months. Thanks very much.